continue with the focus on the American elections, but from a slightly different prism. President Trump has been there and done that. He's won an election, but he ended short of the halfway mark in 2020, becoming one of very few American presidents who didn't quite get the second term. Then, like now, he was not just fighting Biden, but an entire ecosystem, or should one say, the system. Indeed, no candidate in US history has been so reviled in the mainstream as Trump. He's taking on a hostile mainstream media, the intelligentsia, Hollywood talk show hosts, deeply entrenched and highly mobilized, quote, wokery, unquote, global Marxists, Islamic PACs, the Greens, even the United Nations. Is all of this going to be too much for Trump to handle? And if he does lose, will his base, some say the non-elite base, reconcile, or will America be further down the road to a social breakdown? Let's put some of these questions to Professor Salvatore Babones. We know him very well here in India. He's an American sociologist, but has a view on Indian democracy too. He's also, of course, been somebody who has championed India's cause internationally. Salvatore Babones, let me ask you this question. It's a straight one. What is Trump actually against? Why does he always seem to come across as this underdog, taking on a whole system? Is this true? Has the system, what we define in the terms that I have, been unfair to Trump?
Donald Trump is an outsider politician, and he's the first outsider politician who's gained the nomination of a major political party. And that's really what's shaped his difficult trajectory through American politics, that he has not bought into the Republican Party establishment. Of course, all Democrats will oppose Republicans, all Republicans will oppose Democrats. There's no surprise there. Trump is really opposing both political parties. He may have the Republican nomination, but that's not what the Republican Party of 2016 wanted. They certainly were aghast that Donald Trump won their nomination and disappointed that he re-won the nomination in 2024.
So let me ask you this, because it's an important question. We're hearing a lot of statements from Trump's camp. In fact, Trump has just tweeted to say, look, we must take back our country. This is our last chance. It's almost like Armageddon awaits if the Democrats take over. Now, what if the election doesn't go in his favor? We've seen what happened in January 4 years ago. Will the social divide in America deepen to the point of a fracture, civil war, as many people predict, or is there going to be reconciliation?
No, let's be clear. There's no civil war coming in America, and all of that language is overblown on both sides. What we do see is a populist challenge to an entrenched political establishment. That's happened before in America, but it has not been so successful really since 1896 was the last time we had a serious populist, and at that time was a Democratic Party populist candidate, William Jennings Bryan, who almost won the election and didn't quite win the election. He ran for president like Trump. He ran for president 3 times, except he never actually won office. Now, when I say that it's a populist outpouring, that it's a challenge to the establishment, let me just quote you some figures as to which party people are contributing to in this cycle. Among lawyers, 80% are contributing to Democrats. Among teachers, 90%. Among journalists, 96%. And there's one great study among University of Pennsylvania professors. So this is an Ivy League university, actually Donald Trump's alma mater, where he got his degree. 99.7% are donating Democrats. Now, in the tech industry, we all know that Elon Musk has endorsed Donald Trump. And at the level of the billionaire Czech entrepreneur, things may be divided. It's hard to tell. But we have good data on employee contributions. And so for employee contributions at Twitter, 93% for Harris. At Apple, 95% for Harris. At Facebook, 97% for Harris. At Google, 98% of all political campaign contributions have gone to the Biden-Harris side. 100 venture capitalists signed a letter endorsing Kamala Harris. Broadly speaking, the American political establishment is scared to death of a second Donald Trump presidency. In the first Donald Trump presidency, they attempted to control Donald Trump, and that simply didn't work. And that accounted for a lot of the real churn in the first Trump administration. This Donald Trump, if he comes to office, will be coming in with a team ready to go, taking on that old American political establishment with an entirely new team from the ground up.
Final question to you, Mr. Babones. I want to ask you a little bit about the Harris base. What is this base? Here in India, we've heard a lot coming from her so-called ecosystem about our flagging democratic record, about the fact that there are minorities that are feeling distressed in this country, etc. How controlling is that base? Can Harris actually subdue it to be a more balanced, more pragmatic president with regards to directing policy towards India?
The fundamental core of the Harris vote is degreed professionals, relatively middle-class, upper-income degreed professionals. And that is a historic change in the structure of U.S. parties. The poor and less educated overwhelmingly are voting for Donald Trump. And that's even true of minorities, where we used to think of members of minority communities as overwhelmingly voting Democratic. They're still majority voting Democratic, but we're seeing something like 15 to 20% of African Americans voting for Trump. And to put that in perspective, that's up from virtually nothing 20 years ago. Something like 40% of Hispanic Americans voting for Trump. Now, if Harris wins, there's going to be no cataclysm and no real problem for India. I mean, let's just all take a step back and be a little honest about everything. Good relations with India are strongly in the American interest. There's going to be no Justin Trudeau presidency in the United States. If there's a Harris presidency, they'll be a little more pragmatic. If it's a Trump presidency, they'll be more warm. But either way, the U.S. is going to do business with India, and that's not going to change.
What about this legacy that Biden leaves over the last 2 years, where things on the ideological issues look a little out of place? You've had America sort of lecturing us on how we should be sort of looking towards them and what we should be doing to protect our national interests and how we're stepping on American toes. We've had, sanctions now on some of our companies. You know what I'm talking about.
Yes. Look, of course, there are problems in any relationship between countries, and those problems will be a little tougher under a Harris administration than under a Trump administration. But a Trump administration is going to be very hard-nosed about promoting American interests, and Indians should be prepared for that. Look, there's going to be no Sheikh Hasina situation. Whoever wins this election is not going to attempt to overthrow the government of India. Nothing like that is going to happen. There will be slightly more pressure on India's supposedly negative human rights record if there's a Harris presidency. There will be slightly more pressure on India to make economic concessions towards the U.S. under a Trump presidency. Either presidency would push American interests and solely American interests in dealing with India. I don't think Indians need to be worried either way.
Mr. Babones, thank you very much. Very exciting times, viewers. The next 12 hours, suspense. The Indian stock market didn't do very well, as you know, because it doesn't quite like what might be the outcome. And I'm not calling it for anyone. This is going to be a very tight election and a very tautly run campaign. Going into this election puts both these individuals on a very even footing. It's all going to depend on who comes out to vote and in how many numbers eventually.